Hey guys, this video is going to be about IOCs in IB Language A courses. So for me, my experience with IOCs would be with a Norwegian A and English A. Now your teacher will of course go through what it is and exactly how it's going to be done, but a simple reminder of exactly what it is that it's a one-on-one conversation with a teacher with a tape recorder or some kind of recording device on the table to record the conversation. Now in an A-language course, the IOC will be divided into two parts, each of them 10 minutes long. The first part will be about a randomly selected poem. Now the total amount of poems that you'll have to study depends on the size of your class, but one can estimate that will be about one poem for every 2 to 3 students, and then you can sort of guess how many poems it will be. Generally it'll be 10 to 15 to maybe 20 poems, depending on the size of your class. After those 10 minutes are over where you discuss the poem and present the poem, you will then discuss a literary work which you have studied in class with your teacher. Now an important distinction between the two parts is that the poem part will be you presenting the poem, meaning that the teacher won't actually, hopefully won't be saying anything. You should be talking for a full 8 minutes. Because that time you have 10 minutes for the poem, 8 minutes will be you presenting, 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes, will be the teacher asking you about things that you may have forgotten, or just trying to clarify some things to get you to point out things which you maybe didn't mention. And to prepare for this presentation, you'll of course, as I already said, have to practice all the poems, but you will have 20 minutes before you go into the IOC to prepare for just the poem. After the poem part is done, you will have a 10-minute conversation about one of 2 literary works. You won't know which literary work you will get, so you just have to prepare for both of them. And when I say conversation, I also do mean a conversation. The teacher will be asking guiding questions. You should be the one doing most of the talking, but you don't have to prepare for this as much as you would have to prepare for a poem, because the teacher will be there to guide you through it. Now to go into a little bit more detail about how you can prepare for the poem part, as I said, you'll have a list of about 10 to 20 poems depending on the size of your class. One thing that makes it easier is the fact that all the poems will be by the same poet, i.e. I got William Blake. What this means is that there will be common themes in all of the poems because they're all by the same poet, of course. So an important thing is that you have to know these common themes by heart, and you should be able to apply them very easily to all of the poems. Alongside this, you also want to study every poem as much as you can so that you know the main literary devices of each poem, you know the theme and the message of each poem, and you can also apply the common themes of the main poet to each of the individual poems. If you thoroughly study all of this before the IOC, then you can use the 20-minute preparation time that I talked about earlier to structure your presentation of the poem. So then you can structure it just like you would structure an essay analysis of a poem, meaning that you can go into the IOC feeling prepared and also feeling safe that you know exactly where you're going with your presentation of the poem. And then you can also be safe that you just won't randomly run out of time about 6 minutes in and you'll just sit there awkwardly for the last 2 minutes. Now to go into a bit more detail about how you should present the poem, of course this is different for everybody because you have to present it in a way that you feel comfortable, because this isn't something you can practice for very well like you could, for example, the IOP. This is something that has to happen sort of on the spot. You'll only have 20 minutes to prepare it. The way I like to start is by talking about the theme and the poet. This is something you should already know by heart anyway, and this would apply to each of the different poems. So you could already practice this a little bit at home, and then you can start off the IOC with something that you feel very confident about. Then you can transition this into talking about the various literary devices and how they build on the theme and the message of the poem. Now a good literary device to start off with, if you're just feeling lost or panicked, is to talk about structure, because there's very many simple things that you can point out here to make yourself feel more comfortable and to sort of work your way into the IOC. And the most important thing to remember about the poem part of the IOC is that all you have to do is talk intelligently and hopefully confidently about a poem for 8 minutes. And also don't be too worried about missing some minor things, because the teacher, if they're any good and if they're nice, they'll also ask questions in those last 2 minutes, which will help you actually point out these things and maybe score some extra points. Now, in order to prepare for the literary work, the main thing that I have to stress and I have to point out is the fact that you have to actually read it. Because Spark Notes and everything, or lit charts, I guess if you use that, it'll get you through class and it'll help you write a good essay if you're writing it at home. But in the moment, you have to actually be very comfortable with the work. You have to know a lot of things about it. You have to have your own personal thoughts about it. Spark notes and lit charts won't actually help you do that. You have to read it, and you have to be very familiar with it. And the point you want to get to with the literary work in terms of preparedness is that you want to be able to talk about it like you would talk about maybe your favorite movie. You have to know all the characters, you have to know the plot, and you have to know some of the symbolism, some of the literary devices, and some of the more complicated, more interesting aspects of the work. You also have to be able to use the characters and the literary devices and be able to talk about them in terms of the context of the literary work, and also the themes and the message. A good way to practice is then to learn all the different literary devices, learn about the characters, learn about the plot, then try to integrate this into talking about the main themes and the message and the context of the literary work. Now, during the IOC itself, the teacher will be asking guiding questions. So a good way of preparing is also to think about these guiding questions. What could the teacher maybe ask? What are the main points of the various literary works which they might ask me about? It's also important to remember that you can, of course, also twist these guiding questions into just talking about whatever you want to talk about. Because the point of the IOC is to show your own strengths. It's not to show how much the teacher knows or how good the questions that the teacher is asking are. And the most important part, even if the teacher is asking guiding questions and it is supposed to be a conversation of sorts, it should mainly be a monologue. It should mainly be you doing most of the talking. So try to make it so that a teacher only asks like 3 or 4 questions, and that you take these questions and spiral them off into talking about your own things and about interesting things that you know about the literary work. Now, as a short summary, you'll have 20 minutes to prepare for the presentation of the poem. You'll then have 8 minutes to present the poem, 2 minutes where the teacher will be asking you questions about the poem, pointing out things that you maybe missed so you can sort of gain extra points. Then you'll have a 10-minute conversation about 1 of 2 or maybe 3 literary works which you'll have studied in class and which you will then prepare for. Now, some small general tips for the IOC. Don't think too much about the recording device. It'll usually be pretty small, so you can just ignore it. Just focus on the teacher. Don't look at the time. Just focus on talking constantly and consistently. And if you do that, you should most likely be able to say what you have to say in order to get a good grade within the given time period. Also, try to drink a lot of water, feel prepared, you don't want to get cotton mouth in the middle of it. Also, don't fiddle too much. And most importantly, learn the material well so that you feel comfortable with both the poems and the various literary works which you might get. And as a last thing, just try to feel comfortable whilst you're actually sitting there in the IOC room. Because then it'll be a lot easier, it'll be a lot less stressful, and it might even be a little bit of fun. Okay, that was a video on the IOC. If you guys want to watch a video about the IOP, you'll also find that on this channel. And thanks for watching.